Alright guys, what's up? So I'm at the shop right now with my buddy Billy.
What's up?
We're just working on the Vitara build right now. We've got pretty much everything ready to pull the engine out. The axles are out, harness is disconnected, fluids are drained. We're just going to drop it out the bottom. But I figured I'd just make a quick video because I wanted to update you guys once I got out to the shop. And this is kind of the shop. I don't really know how well you can see it, but it's kind of dark back there. This is our work area here. It's got enough room to work on one car at a time, which is all we need, and it's got freshly poured cement floor like a few months ago, so it's nice and leveled. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get this dropped out, and I will be back and I will show you guys once we get it dropped out, and then I'm gonna be loading it up. I'm gonna be taking it home and tearing into it, checking the bearings over, and then taking the head off, getting it ready and ported, and then probably taking it to the machine shop, get it resurfaced, get the valve springs and stuff put back in it, new OEM valves, and get this thing back together and then running again. I also need to obviously get a new clutch, if you guys remember, so that's going to be interesting to see what that looks like when we take it apart. But yeah, it only took us what, like maybe a couple hours?
An hour and a half?
Yeah, didn't take long. This thing's pretty easy because it doesn't have power steering or anything like that, so yeah. And then just outside of the shop down there to the left is my container where I actually store some of my stuff. So, but yeah, should be pretty dope. We're gonna finish getting this out, and then I'll update you guys once it's out of the car, and you'll see a lot more of it once I get back to my house and start tearing into it. I just wanted to kind of show you getting it out of the car and stuff. But yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon. Alright guys, so I forgot my good camera, but we ended up waiting till the next day to do more. But I just got the trans pulled off, and I'm just about to pull the pressure plate off. I'm just going to take it off with an impact gun because I know it's garbage anyway. So get the clutch off, and I'll show you guys here in a couple seconds exactly what happened to the clutch. I already have a good idea, but we'll see when we get it off. Alright guys, so I just got the clutch off of it now, and as you can see, the flywheel's got quite a bit of hot spots, so it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's still pretty bad. So it'll have to be either resurfaced, or I have another stock OEM flywheel that might be in okay shape, but either way I'll probably just get it resurfaced to make sure that it's proper. And then here's the clutch up here, and I suspected that either the actual pressure plate cracked, or that a chunk flew out of it, and a chunk did fly out of it, and you can tell it was just slipping. Still got life left on the pads. I think I just pushed too much boost on the last race and it started slipping. It's a little bit wet from the coolant up there. But yeah, you can see the pressure plate's just absolutely destroyed. So whether the pressure plate was losing clamping force, or the disc just got too worn out, or whether it was just pushing too much power, it's just a cheap clutch anyway, and I'm actually surprised it's not more damage than what it is. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Like I said, I didn't do much more last night, but I'm gonna get this flywheel pulled off this quick, and once that's off, this will pretty much be ready to go to my house and start tearing it down. The training will probably just stay out here. I don't really need to touch the transmission. It's already been rebuilt, so I'll probably just store it. Yeah. Alright guys, so I got the engine all loaded up in the back there. The back of a 2-door Cobalt. Hell yeah. Wasn't too bad. So as soon as we get home to my house, I'll update it once I get in the shed and start tearing into it. But yeah, we'll see you guys then. What's up guys? I'm back at the house now, and as you can see I got the engine already on the stand. I've already got the intake, and I've already got the intake and turbo manifold off of it, just to get that out of the way so I can pull the head off, have a look at the head gasket and all that. But I'm gonna pull the valve cover off and show you guys that it actually does have stock head studs, because if you go on my channel and you watch the video against that GTR, I was actually on 22 pounds, and it's wasn't the first race that I ran that much boost. And looking at the engine more now, there is a possibility that I did lift the head against the GTR, or maybe when I put it on even higher boost. And the only reason I say that is because there was a little bit of either oil or a little bit of like, I don't think it would have been dirty coolant. I want to say it was oil in the coolant, but we also, you know, like it could have dripped from something else when we were pulling the engine out. So I won't really know until I pull the head off. So that's why I want to do that. I want to pull the head off, have a good look at the gasket and everything, have a good look at the top of the piston, make sure the cylinder walls all look good. There's no like scoring, no marks. Make sure the rings and everything look good from what I can see from the top. Anyway, I'm not going to actually pull the pistons right out. The main thing, like I said, with this is to get the head done, and ARP head studs, get it resurfaced, get a fresh head gasket, get it back on there, so we don't have to worry about touching the head again. And if we do touch the head again, it will only be for a cam and possibly valve springs, whether or not I do valve springs on the head right now. It just depends on whether I can afford it. If I can't, it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to be revving it very high on the stock cam anyway. There's no point. It doesn't make the power. It doesn't make even, I'd say 7,800 on a stock cam if you're trickling in the boost. Like you can probably, you know, with boost you can make it carry out longer, but it's a stock D series cam isn't going to carry much more than 7,800 even with boost. And with the stock valve springs, obviously I don't want to really rev it too much higher than that. Anyway, yeah, so that's pretty much it, guys. Gonna get the head off and go over the head gasket and everything like I said. Once the head's off and that's put aside, probably tomorrow I think I'll make a separate video of checking, I'll make either a separate video or I'll tie it into one. I'm not 100% sure yet. Just depends on how long it's going to be right now. But I'd like to tie it into one if I could and just show you guys the bearings in the morning. And so basically show you guys the head gasket now, and then, you know, cut to the morning and we'll be looking at the bearings, checking them out, and then we'll know what we need for sure. And sorry, I'm all over the place and I'm really tired, but once we know what I need for sure, like whether I need bearings, such and such, I know for sure I'm going to need like a head gasket because I'm going to be replacing like everything from in the head and stuff, and I know for sure that I'm going to get the head resurfaced, so that's two things that already need to be accounted for, like price wise. But yeah, so we'll start with getting the head off and I'll show you guys what that looks like, and I'll show you the stock head studs so you actually know that I was running stock head studs, which I already showed you the video of my brand new ARP head stud, so it's kind of obvious that I was running stock head studs. Anyway, alright guys, so if you look down in here, see that we have a stock head stud. If it was a ARP, it would be a 12 point, and you'd see the stud sticking up past it. I'll show you further down. All stock head studs. Yeah, baby. The head looks pretty clean, considering when I originally took the head apart, the only thing I really cleaned up was the top cap for everything. I don't know what it's called. I don't know if it's the cam cap. No, the cam caps are on the. It's like the thing that goes over the cam caps. I don't know what it's called at this moment, but yeah, cam cap covers. Anyway, whatever. Can't remember the name of it at the moment, but yeah. So that's the only thing I cleaned up when I took the head apart last time. So overall, it's pretty clean. Seems like it's been getting lots of oil. The cam looks good from what I can see anyway here. So yeah, get the head pulled off and we'll have a look at the head gasket. So far, actually looking at the top of the head, I'm not seeing any signs of oil mixing with coolant, so that's a good sign. So yeah, we'll see once we get it off. Okay guys, so what's up? We got the head off, and the lighting in here is absolutely awful, but kind of see pistons are still really clean. Like they got a little bit of black in the middle, and not even really black, it's more like a golden brown. Now the head gasket looked like it was in good shape. All the head studs seem to be nice and tight still, so I'm still not 100% sure at this point if it lifted the head. I don't think it did, because I would think if it would have lifted the head gasket would have had some type of a little more wear or damage, or you would have seen where the head kind of moved a little bit when it lifted, sort of thing. And I don't see any signs of that. So like, there's a word for that, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's when the sleeve, it's the same thing that happens when the sleeves actually move, and you can see it on the head gasket. It's the same thing as that, but I'm referring to as if the head lifted, and I don't see anything like that on the head gasket. So I don't think it lifted, and that's really good. Now all the cylinders, you can see they still look like, I don't know how good the lighting is from here. Oh, that's a little better. You can see they all look nice and good still. There's not really any, there's a couple small scratches, nothing that I can really feel, but there is one longer scratch on the first cylinder, and it's right where I actually, where I clocked the ring. I'm not sure if it's the first or second ring that I clocked on that valve relief, but it either I didn't sand it down enough after I ground it, like I didn't sand down the tips enough after I ground it, and that's why it scratched, or when I was putting them in, because I didn't have a ring compressor tool, there's a possibility maybe I nicked it, or just slightly, when I put it in, maybe I just slightly tapped it down, and it maybe just caused a little shear of metal to come up enough that it caused the scratch or whatever. But regardless, it's fine. The scratch is like, you could probably hone it out if you really wanted to, but I don't want to hone this engine anymore on these size pistons, because it already seems like they have quite a bit of piston to wall clearance. I don't really hear any piston slap or anything like that, but I also have the Teflon coated Vitara pistons, the newer ones, so that could be why. And maybe the piston to wall is not as bad as I think it is, but I'd have to measure it, which I'm going to do, to find out where it's sitting, because if it's really loose and it's really bad to the point where it's actually going to cause more issues, then I will probably just go ahead and get this board out and put bigger pistons in, one size up, 20 thou over. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy because everything looks great so far. The pistons look amazing. They're super clean still. And like I said, all the cylinder walls are fine. That little scratch, I'm really not too worried about it. I'm more worried about checking my piston to wall clearance and making sure that that's within a reasonable amount. I don't mind if it's a bit loose, because then it just, when it gets hot and everything expands, being a cast piston, it's not as bad having a little bit of a looser piston to wall clearance. Now I've never had any smoking issues with this car or anything like that, so I have the NPR rings in it right now, and they seem to be working okay. If I have any issues with them, I'll switch to Hastings, but I'm going to just obviously reuse them right now. I don't even plan on taking the pistons out of this, as long as the piston to wall clearance is fine. I don't even plan on taking the pistons out. I literally just plan on checking the bearings tomorrow, like I mentioned earlier, and another thing on that, it's looking pretty good, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But I haven't actually touched anything on the bottom, so that's all I'm doing for tonight on that. That's gonna stay there. I'm not doing anything else on the head tonight, cleaning wise anyway. And alright guys, sorry about that. So I just wanted to let you guys kind of know what my plan is. Obviously for tonight I'm gonna head to bed soon because it's like 12 o'clock. But first thing in the morning I'm gonna come out here. I'm gonna get this head all cleaned up and ready to be ported and polished. But I think for the beginning of this year I'm going to run stock valves, springs, and cam, not rev it super high, and see what kind of power I can make, because I do plan on dynoing it before the beginning of the year, before the beginning of the race season anyway. Yeah, so that's basically the head. I'm going to do a separate video on that, like cleaning it up and porting and polishing it and stuff. So I'll put a video out on that very soon. It's going to be done quickly. It's not going to be a 2-3 week thing. It's going to be done quick, so I'm going to pump out quite a few videos and try to keep pumping them out. Another thing I wanted to show you guys quick was this VTEC solenoid. I had a look at it because I never took it off since I rebuilt the engine, and it's a good idea to take them off and clean them out, because when you first break in an engine they can get some shavings in the screen, and I just decided to take it off and have a look to get an idea of what the bearings were going to be like, and there wasn't much metal shavings in there at all. So basically when we come back out here in the morning, I'll tear into this. Excuse me. I'll tear into this and get the oil pan and stuff off, and we'll have a look at the bearings. Okay guys, it cut out again, sorry about that. What I was getting at was we're going to pull the pan off in the morning. We're going to check the rod bearings, main bearings. If they all look good, then we'll go ahead and we'll plastic gauge them out. and if they plasti gauge properly, then it's pretty well good to go back together. I just got to decide if I'm going to get a better oil pump or what I'm going to do with that. I'll also probably show you guys I will show you guys the piston to wall clearance as well. We'll go over that and stuff, but if that's all good, then this should be good to go back together, and then it's just a matter of finishing the head, which I already said we're going to do a separate video on. So yeah, I'm going to get to bed, guys. Hey guys, so I just figured I'd, kind of in the way, figured I'd show you the cylinder head quick before I head out to the shed. You see we got it pretty clean. I still need to clean up the surface a little bit more, but the inside's pretty clean as well. So I figured I'd just kind of show you a sneak peek of that for the next video when we start porting it. Basically right now I'm just going to head out to the shed, and I've already got the oil pan off and the girdle, all the bolts cracked loose properly in sequence so you don't warp it. I'm going to take it off and check the bearings. I don't think there's an issue. I did find out why I was low on oil pressure, and it's a really stupid mistake that I made, but I mean, it was the first engine I built like that kind of thing, so it was the first one I went over and did like the oil pump and the pistons, the bearings, like everything, like replaced, went over everything and kind of replaced a lot of stuff. So I accidentally, well, I'll just show you guys when we get out there, but it's kind of funny, you're gonna laugh. So I'll see you guys when we get to the shed, and we'll crack the thing, show you the bearing, or have a look at the bearings, because I haven't even seen them yet. The bolts aren't even all the way out, and then we will look at my mistake. Alright guys, so I'm gonna show you my mistake quick, and you're probably gonna laugh. I'm not even gonna tell you guys at first. I'm just gonna zoom in on it and focus the camera. Now, mind you, if you take into account the shims I put in it, I'm about at stock oil pressure right now. So what I accidentally did is there's a built-in washer on the actual nut itself, and for some reason I thought it still needed a washer, and I put another one on. I don't know how that happened, because I went over everything else really like meticulously on this, so like if I even said that right, but fuck it. So yeah, basically when I did everything, the rods are all in the right direction. Like everything was done very carefully when I did this, so I don't know how that happened, but that is why I'm losing oil pressure. So for me to have the oil pressure I did have without removing that washer, I know for a fact I'm going to have 16 psi more at idle, so it's going to solve the problem right there, along with going with a little bit of a better oil. So now I'm just going to crack the main bearings off. I'm going to have a look at them, see how they look. If they look rough or like really bad, then obviously I'm just going to have to replace them, get new ones, and plasti gauge the new ones. If they don't look too bad, which I'm hoping they don't, because by pulling the pan and everything, there was a few shavings in the pan, but you got to remember this engine was only driven at the racetrack, so it literally has just pulls on it. So the engine probably was just fully broken in by like the last time I put oil in it, kind of thing, you know what I mean? So it probably still had a little bit of metal shavings just through the engine that needed to get out, or in the bottom of the pan that didn't get out on the last oil change, sort of thing. Because I know when I did pull the pan off to change the oil pump after I first started this engine, there was like the slightest bit of shavings, and that was like initial startup and like revving it up and down and breaking it in a bit and getting it to heat cycle a couple times. Well, probably not even that long, because the oil pump started leaking before that, but I got it running long enough that when I pulled the pan off there, you could tell there was like a little bit of just the tiniest flakes from it starting to break in. And then I cleaned the oil pan out completely, and that could have also, like I said, just been everything going through the engine. So I cleaned the oil pan out completely, put it back on with the new E15B oil pump that's on it now, and that's when I obviously made the mistake with the washer. But I'm hoping that the bearings are going to be okay, because the amount of material is just like normal what you'd see on break-in. I didn't see any copper. It's all just the first layer of bearing material that I'm seeing, like normal break-in flakes kind of thing. dust basically. Like my VTEC solenoid, I even checked that, and I said that earlier on, and it wasn't even bad. So overall, it's looking really good. If there was a chewed up bearing, I definitely would have seen more signs of it by now. But it's just a matter of whether there's any spots on these bearings that are going to be, you know, questionable or not. So anyway, let's pull the main cap off. We'll get the mains looked at, and if they look good, then we'll go ahead and plastic gauge them. Get the tops cleaned off, plastic gauge. Or sorry, I'll probably have to rotate the crank and maybe get a little bit of brake clean and a rag, try to get it cleaned up before I plastic gauge it, or I can just plastic gauge it with the oil on it. We've did it before. It'll give me a rough idea anyway. It might not be 100% accurate, but plastic gauge isn't anyway, so it's just for making sure that you're sort of within spec. The best way to actually do it would be to use a micrometer and actually like a bore gauge. I think like a Mac tool bore gauge or whatever they're called there. I need to get some of those because I do want to get into more precise engine building when I start doing more like putting more money into it. I'll be a little more precise with stuff. But for right now, being a cheaper build, it's not too bad. The rods are the only thing I really have invested, so those are the main ones I want to make sure that I check. But yeah, let's go ahead, pull this top cap off, and we will see what these stupid things look like. Alright guys, so just quickly showing you the crank is fine. I got the girdle off. The bearings are actually end up being a little bit worn. You can see like that one there is not too bad. That one's pretty bad. That one's not too bad. That one's not too bad. Basically, I think this probably had a lot to do with when it was running low, when the oil pressure was really low and the oil was really hot, and that could have been from that shim in the oil pump, or the oil pump itself might be also damaged a bit now from it being low on oil pressure. It was only near the end of the year that it got lower on oil pressure. I always had low oil pressure at idle, but it was never like below spec, so I wasn't really concerned. I figured I just needed to change my oil up, so I kept trying different oils, and that could have also not been a good thing, changing from regular to synthetic at the end of the year. That's when it lost oil pressure almost completely. But yeah, so what I'm gonna do, just to kind of get an idea if it's clearance related or if it's related to just the low oil pressure, which then in turn I would probably just get a new oil pump, a brand new one, or look that one over really well, and if it looks fine, then just make sure I take that washer out and just really keep an eye on the oil pressure when I put the new bearings and stuff in. But what I'm going to do in the meantime to try to figure out if the clearances are too tight, mainly on the rods, because if you look over here, the rod ones seem to be actually the worst. Now it could just simply be this bearing is not a strong enough material for what I was revving it to, but I think it honestly was probably to do with the lower oil pressure at idle, and it also had some hesitations and stuff, like where it would not misfire, but the idle air control valve was acting up, so it would, you know, it would surge and stuff, and different things like that. So the oil pressure would go up and down, up and down. But when it was hot and I wasn't running boost, the oil pressure stayed pretty decent. It was just once I started getting into boost a lot, the oil would get really hot, and that's obviously just, you know, I need a better oil. But I'm obviously going to upgrade to the race bearings when I do upgrade. But for now, I just want to take some plastic gauge, and I want to actually plastic gauge out this first rod that I've taken off so far, as well as all the main caps. I just want to plastic gauge them with the bearings how they are, and see what the clearances are, because if the clearances are in spec with the bearings the way they are, then that would tell me that they were too tight to begin with, and I might need to go with an undersized bearing or something another. But like I said, it could just simply be the fact that I didn't have a good enough bearing for what I was doing with the engine, and the abuse I was putting it through with the two-step and the just the boost and the power that it was making and stuff. So yeah, I'll go ahead and get some plastic gauge, and we'll kind of plastic gauge out the mains and that one rod bearing. And I'm also going to, not in this video but in another video once I get a little further into it, I'm going to take a micrometer and check to see, check about like 4 different spots around the rod with the cap torqued down with the bearings in, or with the bearings out. It doesn't really matter. I just need to see if the if it's out of round at all, because that could cause the wear that it has. And then I could just take the rods to the machine shop and get them to make them true again, bore them to be true, or hone them, or whatever they need to do to make them perfectly round. And then they would probably have to size the bearings for me, or give me the measurements for what bearings I would need to get for it, and then I'll just plastic gauge it myself to double check everything. Obviously, it's always good to do that, even if everything's been already clearanced and stuff, just to make sure nothing's messed up or there wasn't any mistakes made. So yeah, we'll go get some plastic gauge and we'll come back out and we will start plastic gauging some stuff, and then that'll pretty much be the end of this video. And I just I basically just wanted to show you guys, because I knew there was a possibility, and that's like one of the main reasons I wanted to check the bearings, as well as do the head of course too. But everything with the pistons, the wrist pins, all that looks really good. The wrist pins look like they look the exact same as when I put them in. They look brand new. The rods look brand new. The pistons look really good. The cylinder walls are really good, besides that one tiny little scratch on the one, which isn't even a big deal. So my main concern right now is just figuring out what caused this to happen, whether it was clearance related or if it was just that lower oil pressure at idle. Now, if you want to know what I'm talking about, is about up to halfway through the year, I think it was probably 14 psi when it got really hot after doing pulls. Sometimes it would drop down to like 10ish at idle, and I could never figure out if it was just the oil I was running, because I think at that point I was just running 10W40 regular motor, like non-synthetic Castrol GTX, and it always seemed to hold at least like 10 to 11 psi when it was really hot. Mind you, at that time I wasn't cranking the really high boost to it, so now that once I started cranking the high boost to it, it seemed to get the oil like really hot. But I think along with oil getting hot, if the clearances were off, and that is the issue, it wouldn't matter, because the oil itself, no matter what oil you have, if it's out of round, sorry, if the rods are out of round, or if the clearances are too tight, it's not going to matter. It's going to eat away at the bearings, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys, and I'll show you once I get back out here. Okay, so I got the 3 different kinds of plastic gauge here. The red one is to measure from, I believe, hold on one sec. $20,000ths to 60 thousandths, and the green one is for 10 thousandths to 30 thousandths. There's other colors too, but this is all I have in the package, and thankfully I got 2 green ones because that's all we need for Honda bearings. So basically what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to, you can see I opened the package already, and you can probably, hold on, let me see if I can get that focused a little better. So you can see the little piece of plastic gauge in there. Basically, you're going to want to take a pair of scissors and cut your pieces for each main bearing, just a little bit smaller than the actual bearing itself, like a couple millimeters smaller, not much. Yeah, so you want to do that, and then you want to just, if it was fresh, when I get the fresh bearings and I put them in, the surface will be cleaned completely. In this case it's got oil on it still, but very light amount, and if it throws off the reading, I'm not really too concerned. I just want to get a rough reading of whether the bearings are on the tight side or whether they're on the loose side, so when I order my new ones I can decide whether I want to go with undersized by 10 thousandths or not. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the plastic gauge all cut up and put on there, and then once I get it all cut up and laid on, I'll just kind of show you guys like what it looks like on there, and then I'll lay the girdle on, torque the girdle down, and we'll take it off and have a look at what it looks like. Alright guys, so I did move the engine I did move the engine block over a little closer to the light to try to show you guys a little bit better. So I'm just going to try to move it out of the way to show you plastic gauge. I don't know how well this is going to work. We'll try that one there. It seems to be the best light. Okay, so you can see the little piece there. Not the greatest, but let me see if I can zoom in on that. So that's basically the size that you put on, and that's on all of them. It's on that one, that one. There's 5 altogether, so just cut 5 pieces that size for your mains when you're doing those. And I'm gonna go ahead and get the girdle on, get it torqued down, and we will be back once I take it off and check these specs. Alright guys, so once you get the all the bolts loose and you pull up on each one and make sure it's all loose after you torque it down, of course. When you torque it down, here, let me actually show you guys this. The sequence is I did this quite a few times, so I should remember this pretty good, but if I'm wrong, anyone can correct me. The sequence is the sequence is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. First step is crap. I'm probably gonna forget this. I think the first step was 36 foot-pounds, and the second step is 53 to finish. That's the last step for D16 Z6. I'm not sure if the girdles are different in the other D series. I haven't looked into that. So yeah, that is pretty well that. Now when we take this off, you want to try to get something to pry in between the crank and this, and get it to come loose instead of banging it side to side. It just gives you a better measurement. Or if you can get it off with your hands and wiggle it up and off really carefully. So that's what I'm going to do right now, and we will see how this works. I can already see that it worked, so let's have a look here. So you can already see it's squished out a bit here, and I'm already looking at this, and I'm already seeing that the clearances look fairly even for the most part. And one's really hard to see because there's a lot of oil on that one. And looking at them, they look like they're around 20 thou. So on your plastic gauge thing, if I find a little piece that I cut off, that would help. Oh, there it is. Okay, so on your plastic gauge thing, okay, one sec. So on your plastic gauge thing, you have, you have from 10 thousandths of an inch to 30 thousandths of an inch, and you also have millimeters, which would be I don't really know millimeters, but they have millimeter measurements on here too. I personally use thousandths of an inch. A lot more familiar with that just from machine work and such. So if you take this and you put this up to, say, this one here, you've got actually a little bit wider than 20 thous and a little bit smaller than 15 thous. So looking at that right there is a good sign, boys and girls. So it being even all the way across, that's a good sign. But one really strong sign with it right now is the fact that it is right in between kind of being perfect and being too tight. So 15 thous personally for me on a turbo build, that's too tight. I'll run a thicker oil and make up for it. It's just too tight of a clearance and it's going to wear out the bearings quicker. So personally for me on this build, 20 thousandths would be perfect. But I would be acceptable with a little bit more than that. Like say, I don't know, 22, 24 thous, something like that. That would be okay with me, but I would like to stick around 20 thous, between 18 and 20 thous on these bearing measurements. So right now we're probably sitting at about, if I'm just trying to check right now, we're sitting probably, I would say, about 18 thous. So we're close, but the fact that these bearings are already worn down and we're still 2 thous off from being at 20 thous, I'm a little bit concerned. Now if I put the new bearings in and they plastic gauge out the same, then it wouldn't be bad. I can get undersized bearings, but it's gonna say the bearings brand new would have plastic gauged out to 15 thous exactly, say they did. Well, if I go with a one size down bearing, it's going to plastic gauge out to probably about 25 thous. So it's a little bit on the big side for my liking. The main bearings really weren't that worn out. They were only in a couple spots. So it would have still, for it to be fairly even across like that, and for the bearings not to actually have any gouging out of them, just mainly the coating is a little bit worn off kind of thing. That basically just means I think I can probably go ahead and order another set of the OEM bearings, and they should plastic gauge out almost the same to this. Might be a tad bit tighter, but I'm going to be getting the crank micro polish, so that will take off just the tiniest, slightest bit. Not sure exactly what it takes off, but it does take off just the slightest bit. So yeah, I gotta cut this video because it's getting super long, guys, but that pretty much shows you how to plastic gauge and personally what I want to do for my specs. So if these are brand new bearings and this plastic gauge out like this, I can see the middle one looks like it's actually a little bit of a looser clearance than the outer ones, and yeah, so the middle one looks like it's a little bit of a looser clearance, but that could also just be that bearing in particular and the wear on it, and I'm actually looking at it now and it's the one with the most wear, so that would make sense. Along with the one with the second most wear is the N one here, which plastic gauged out kind of thin too. So yeah, I think we're going to call this video here. In the next video we're going to move on to the head and start working on that. Now that we know that we need new bearings for the bottom end, we know that it probably wasn't a clearance issue, because even if it was 15 thous, like when I put them in originally, or 16 thous, or even if it was a bit on the tight side, the power level that I was making this year still should have been, you know, if I was making around 300, 330, it should have been still acceptable with the oil and stuff. Yeah guys, so it cut out on me again, but I don't think it was an issue with the clearances. Considering like the oil I was running and stuff, I don't think it was an issue at all with the clearances. I think the issue had to do with that washer and it getting too hot. But I gotta cut this video, it's getting way too long. We'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one and subscribe.